It's a time of year when a lot of people are thinking about farming, but there's one type of farming that happens in Oklahoma that a lot of people may not realize. That's deer farming. Here to kind of show us around is deer farm owner Bill Kibler. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Well, so this is quite the place you have here. How many deer do you have on this property?
Currently we have about 128.
Wow.
Counting everything. Got high fence on about 40 acres.
Yeah.
And got about 13 different pens with deer in them. We're right in the middle of fawning season right now. So we're just about to wind it down. We've got 3 or 4 does left to go and we'll be finished with that.
Can we go in there and
Sure.
take a look while we're visiting? Well, it looks like you have some friendly deer here. How did you get started with this?
Well, I'd read about it, and it's just something that I've always had a curiosity for deer. I've raised deer. I had friends did it. My brother got into this business first. It's a good market. It's another way to make a living.
A living made off a solid market. Does are sold to other breeders, while bucks end up either as breeding stock or behind high-fenced hunting preserves like this one. As these private preserves grow in popularity across Oklahoma, so does the demand for animals to hunt. However, getting the deer to the sale takes diligence. There may be people out there that say, we've got so many deer in this state. Why are we farming deer or growing deer in captivity like this? What are the reasons behind this, and why is this different from that?
Well, we do have the largest deer population in Oklahoma ever, but that's Oklahoma wildlife. And you and I and everybody in Oklahoma own the wildlife in Oklahoma. And it is against the law for me to take any wildlife, whether it be a squirrel, a raccoon, or a deer, and put it in a pen, because I can't own that wildlife. These deer, we have certificates, licensed from the Department of Ag, so we can raise these deer in a pen. And if I were to put up a hunt area out here, like that are going up every day in Oklahoma, the only way I can stock that is from breeders like Mr. Kibler, because I can't use any wild deer to put in there. In fact, when I build that hunt area, the Department of Wildlife Conservation comes out and sweeps it and cleans out all the wildlife before they can introduce these pen-raised deer.
According to the Texas Wildlife and Parks Department, 1/3 of private huntable land in that state is now behind high fences. Back in Oklahoma, Bill spends every day behind his. What's an average day like for you out here?
Our days start shortly after daylight. This time of year, we have to get up and walk these pens every day, 3 times a day, looking for babies. We vaccinate these babies with CDT and BOCI. We give them an equalizer down the throat, and all that needs to be done within 24 hours of birth. We also put an ear tag in, and that'll identify them back to the moms. By walking the pens, we also know that this doe just had babies this morning, and I know that they're hers when I tag them. For genetics, it's pretty important to do that.
Like other domestic herds, good genetics are the key ingredient. The better the genetics, the higher the sale prices. At a deer farm, good genetics mean big horns. Bill has been focused on rack size since starting the business, and seeing his success required a short drive through a maze of fencing. One of the most difficult tasks in setting up a deer farm is the fencing. Bill spent 2.5 years putting up the Oklahoma-required 8-foot fences, held in place with concrete set corners and 10.5-foot T-posts.
This is the double fencing I was talking about earlier. I really don't know how deer farmers get by without it, because if you have a deer that escapes, they're gone.
Right.
But with this, I can always get them back into a pen. So.
The bucks are kept at the back of the property due to their skittish nature. It's also important to keep vegetation to a minimum and feed to a maximum.
You'll notice it's real heavily timbered.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of vegetation growing in here, and most of that's because of the drought, but the biggest deal with that is we don't really want these bucks eating anything but their feed.
Okay.
The more that feed they eat, the better their antlers are going to be. Okay. If they're browsing and eating a lot of grasses and stuff, they're eating less feed, they're not going to get the nutrition that they need to grow the big set of horns.
While the feed is essential to big racks and big prices, those horns are nothing to take lightly. Whitetail bucks have been known to be aggressive during certain times of the year. And because familiarity breeds danger, bucks are never bottle-fed as fawns. Does, on the other hand, are a different story.
We pull triplets and any small fawns that look like they may not make it on the mother. If we have any fawns that are pre-sold and they want them bottle-fed, we'll pull those also. A lot of the people like their doe fawns bottle-fed. It makes them easier to handle. You can walk right up to them, work them if you need to. If they don't have working facilities like we do, the deer are calmer. Bottle-fed deer in pens with deer that aren't bottle-fed, it will tend to calm them down and make them more cooperative when you do go to work the deer.
Yeah. Gene, Bill makes this look easy, but it's really not that easy having all these deer.
No, Mr. Kibler kind of makes it look really easy, but deer farming's not all warm and fuzzy and feeding fawns. As a deer farmer myself, I can tell you we have some real challenges here in Oklahoma. The white-tailed deer, there are some infectious diseases that are endemic in Oklahoma in our cattle and our sheep population that when infected into a white-tailed deer causes a high mortality rate. We also have the vector here, which is a little black culicoides gnat. And starting about this time of year for the next 2 months, it's not uncommon to have up to 50% mortality in some deer herds.
Really?
So you can see the challenges. If half of your livestock died, it's not very economically feasible.
Preventing those losses requires working deer much the same as cattle. The Kiblers use a special deer chute for the work. Federal law requires private whitetail herds to be brucellosis-free, tuberculosis accredited, and monitored for chronic wasting disease. That work and any vaccinations should be done in cool weather. Because of their flighty personalities, deer work during the summer are likely to die from the stress. If somebody in Oklahoma is seeing this piece and they're maybe thinking, oh, this might be something I'm interested in, what are a couple, 3 things that they need to really think about before they jump into a business like this?
Go to a reputable breeder who's got good stock. If they've had deer here in Oklahoma for several years, you're not going to experience the high death losses you will by importing deer from other states. So go to a breeder who's established, who's reputable. You can get a wealth of information from these people for almost nothing. And then the other thing is to try and find a veterinarian. We have a shortage of food animal veterinarians here in Oklahoma, and we even have less that will work on exotic hoofstock or deer.
So whether you have 10 acres or 10,000, deer farming is a manageable business in Oklahoma.
Come here.
For Bill Kibler and his family, it's a business as much as it is a lifestyle.